Hello, so I was asked to make a guide about how to make a hyper offense, since I think in the last video I kind of showed how strong it can be if used correctly, although it's not really too difficult of a team to use. I think you almost always need like a lead gobademic, so that way you can set up barbs, because that's like the main way you can actually break through a team. And so on lead gobademic I like barbs, hypnotize, that way you can hypnotize strats, which could otherwise gust. You run provoke in order to stop like burn up and tear down. So that way they can't remove barbs. And then you run, I think, Muck Blast last slot, sometimes still useful. Just in case Gobdemic ends up being alive and come in late game and still use its speed tier to clean up. And then you run Clutch Flush, you don't live any hit, so that way something like a Tyrex leads off versus you, you can still get up 2 layers of barbs. Since if they Earthquake, then your Clutch Flushy activates, so you set up the first layer of barbs and they set up the second layer of barbs. So I think that's basically like almost, I think Gobademic's basically a mon that you need on any hyper offense team, since setting up barbs is just really important and it allows you to actually break the opposing team. Because that's just like continual chip they're taking throughout the game. And then I think as far as like other mons that you almost always need on hyper offense, Wintrix actually a really, I think Wintrix just like a solid mon that you almost always want to have on hyper offense team, and has like some nice defensive utility, like being earth resist or earth immunity actually, so you can still deal with stuff like Borok, because otherwise Scarf Borok maybe gets annoying. And Wintrix also has like access to the move provoke, so that also allows you to kind of prevent them from removing your hazards, and that's like the main thing. That so if you're using like Gobdemic hyper offense, you basically need to like make sure that your team doesn't allow the opponent to remove like the hazards too easily. And so like I mean Wintrix can somewhat let Stratosaur come in and remove hazards, but then if you have like Peace of Mind, then you can now suddenly do damage because they have to spend a turn clicking Gust, and then now you have wait, just you run Brain Freeze here. Ice Essence. So I think these two are generally almost always mons you want. T-Clips is probably another mon that you almost always want on a hyper offense team. So I think here I'm kind of like showing you like the general guidelines for making a hyper offense team. Like they're not like super duper strict, but this is probably like a good general form to follow if you want to make a pretty successful team. Get Power Focus, Gamma Pulse, Dark Surge, Raging Hell. And then you can run like Health Amulet on this if you don't have another mon that wants Health Amulet more. Or you could just run like an Essence, like a Dark Essence. Alright, so then now after this, another mon that you generally need is like some form of like speed control. So you need something that can like basically revenge kill threatening Loomians and also probably like late game sweep. So in the last team I had Jolttooth, which was Choice Scarf, which I actually quite, or with Speciality Boots. I actually quite like this mon as a Scarfer, because basically with Speciality Boots you outspeed up to Smart Protogon, and this actually is pretty useful with Speciality Boots because you outspeed like threats like Wintrix and Icephalin and many other is with the your dual stab combination you actually threaten out a lot of looms, and so then once you threaten them out you still get like your ambush boost, and so generally you're like forcing something out, hitting, and then swapping out yourself, so it doesn't actually matter that much that you're now stuck into a move with Jolttooth. And so that's why I really like Speciality Boots Jolttooth. I think for this team I'll use something else. It's annoying that the team builder doesn't have like a delete Loomian slot, so put like an Embit in here. So here's where you generally want like some form of speed control, which will usually be like a Speciality Boots user. And so another nice thing about Jolttooth is it does like scare out Stratosaur immediately, so I think that's something important to have, something that immediately scares out Stratosaur. Okay, so what do I want to put on this team? So I'll just build like an example hyper offense team. Try and make it a bit different from the last one. You also generally want like some sort of idea of how you want to break the opposing teams, like have X break for Y. So for example, in the other team I had Volcaloa breaking like a Tundralin, which would help out the Borok and the Jolttooth. So things like that are important to consider. You also don't want to be like lose to faster offensive threats. You still want to have a way to deal with those. So even though you're hyper offense, you still need to like be able to be at least defensively solid enough to outplay different threats. And so I think that's like where T-Clips becomes like very important, since you have like 3 immunities, so it gives you a lot of outplay potential. And it's just like such a strong mon right now. Like these are both like S tier right now. Okay. So I mean, I want something that can scare out Stratus, or maybe I'm gonna go with more of like a ranged hyper offense team here. So basically, I can have break down their ranged wall and then possibly clean. I'll go with Zulong actually. So I'll use brute force, and I'm thinking maybe like something like Valkyrie here. So basically, like Valkyrie could break like their ranged wall, and then Zulong can put in work. So I'll go with electric essence. That makes sense. I think electric essence. You want the Thunderstrike increased damage for stuff like Mawamurk and Ventilance. Since Thunderstrike is higher base power than Elemental Burst, so maybe you want to click that slightly more than Elemental Burst. And Zulong gives you like a decent pivot, so that also like if you Ancient Roar on a slightly slower thing, that also becomes easier to bring in something has a bit more defensive utility, like something like T-Clips. If I wanted this team to become like more viable in a Cephalops meta, I mean T-Clips does also help you out in a Cephalops meta because it can be a dark immunity, so you're immune to Soul Drain. Last move on Zoo, I just like the move Dodge actually. Lets you scout for like Scarfer thing, like things with speciality boots, and energy, like wasting their energy sometimes also very important. There's not really a much better move you can even use in this last slot for Zoo. So that's pretty good. Valkyrie, I think here we can go with the plain shell and ability awakening. Since you don't really need rejuvenate on this Valk on like a more hyper offense team, so with this Valk you can like blow up like a Mawamurk with plain shell, magnified raging howl. So that's pretty good. And let's see, guys. Here in the speciality boots slot. Alright, what do I want to use now? I mean, the team itself doesn't really have like the greatest way to deal with Protogon. Yeah, you still probably want like some sort of like Protogon answer, because that would be pretty threatening for me. Comes in on like T-Clips, threatens out Wintrix, threatens out Falk. So I think a Protogon answer is pretty good. I might go with Tyrex. Tyrex isn't bad. Tyrex is like pretty decent mod. Like defensively kind of like checks a lot of things, so I think Tyrex might be what I go with here. Tyrex, I can use my health amulet on this. Really, I mean, okay, I could do the there's the thing with like power draw chomp, and so what this lets you do, it's only 45 base power, right? But with power draw, you multiply that by 1.5, and so chomp becomes what's this, 22.5, so 67.5 base power, which isn't terrible if you hit that like super effective on a plant type like Chartiki. Does a bit of damage. And also like things for like Marvelberg, which would otherwise resist both of your stabs. So I think this could also like cheese the Marvelberg, which does also help out like Valkyrie and Zulong a lot. So maybe we could go with this. And then you run Sharpen. So that way you don't miss Steel Crusher. You could also not run, you could run, what's it, Dark Shell, or what's it called? Shade Shell, yeah. Or you could run this. Okay. Some sort of hazard removal sometimes does help. I don't think hazard removal is that important on hyper offense. So I guess it's probably fine without it, because it's gonna be hard for like your opponent to actually set hazards up unless they like also have a lead Gobidemic. But then, and even with hazards up, you don't care too much about like the health of most of your Loomians. Maybe run health amulet on this for like Cephalops. That's one problem with Tyrex. It does invite in Cephalops. If I wanted to use this in like Cephalops meta, it does become a bit more difficult. And then, what do I want to use here as my speciality boots user? Is there anything that I need to like really revenge kill here? I think Zulong's already pretty good for like revenge killing like air types. Okay, I'll use Top Top, I think. No one needs to Scarf Top Top. It's actually not bad. Top Top baits in a lot of things that like Valkyrie and Zulong can take advantage of. So Scarf Top Top. It's pretty good with like Jungle Jutsu and the late game cleans pretty well. Harder. Bushwhack's unfortunately its best plant type move. And what move last? I see you could actually, it got bulk up now, so maybe that does something if you barter away your speciality boots. I mean, poison's useful as well, but I'll put bulk up in this line. I think this should be pretty solid. Looks like pretty good hyper offense team.